So you were talking about being one of the founding directors there of Choice FM, which many of us grew up on and grew up with. The first black radio station, or the first radio station that played black music on rotation. What was that like? We see the impact and the outcome, but what was that like getting that going?
Well, we applied 3 times before we actually got the license. And then when we did eventually get the license, it was just for South London. We had the power of, I think it was one watt or something ridiculously small. We didn't even have the strength of a light bulb for us to go on the airwaves. Whereas other stations like Kiss FM had a kilowatt, so 100 times more than we did. But having said that, of course, once you're on the airwaves, you can't stop the airwaves, So we were getting people as far as Milton Keynes, I think, or Aylesbury, and calling in and saying, "Oh, we're listening to this. We're just about picking you up. It's brilliant." So, the marketing, the area, they can't stop us from the airwaves, but they can stop us from the marketing perspective. So we could only market in South London. I think it was Wimbledon to Lewisham and Croydon to Kennington or somewhere like that. So we could only talk to people and sell out advertising within that district. And we still survived. We went on to grow our network. We bought we won a Birmingham license, which was much bigger than the London license. And then later on, there was WNK in North London. And then we bought the license for WNK, which gave us a London-wide license. And that's how we survived. And then, of course, 15 years later, we decided that, we knew we weren't going to grow, and it wasn't sustainable, because most of our clients were small black businesses who did not have, they would never be able to afford advertise on big stations like Capital Radio and those stations, which is why Choice FM was an essential part of the entrepreneurial or the black business growth. And even though many of them could, it still wasn't enough for us to either maintain what we were doing at a good level, or there were lots of other political things that were in play that made us couldn't survive. And those other politics were things like some of the big radio stations had what you call sales houses, and they would do the national sales. So when we started being either approaching or being approached by some of the national sales houses, the big station said, if you sell for Choice FM, you're going to lose our customers. Yeah. So we were locked out of the national sales. But they had a master plan, because they knew, we were always told, especially when I was trying to find money to invest in Choice FM. And the only way I was able to do that, I became the greatest salesperson ever and persuaded my parents to remortgage their house to give me some money to invest. And I knew the burden was on me to make sure that it worked. And it did, thank God. But I also knew that when it came to time that we needed to look for more investment, and we were trying to find other ways of making sure we could carry on. A lot of people were saying to me, "Oh, black music will never catch on." Now that was it was the biggest joke. But then
I hope you told them that.
They were saying black music would never catch on, but then they stifled a black radio station so they could buy us out.
Yeah.
And as you know, before we sold to Capital, we were going to sell to Chrysalis, music that owned Heart and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But just as I think about a week before we were signed, or 2 weeks before we were supposed to sign to Chrysalis, that was when 9/11 happened and everything, the world changed. And then after that, it took us about another 3 years or so to get something back in play. And we eventually sold to Capital Radio for probably half of what we would have had prior to that, And the rest is history. It's now known as Capital Extra.
Yeah, I just was about to ask that, actually. That's now known as One Extra, and it's pretty much...
Capital Extra. One Extra is BBC One.
Okay.
One Extra is BBC. Choice FM is now known as Capital Extra.
Okay.
Because black music is not going to catch on.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's completely turned everything upside down, because before you could hardly hear any black music anywhere. Now you can hardly hear, unless you tune in specifically to a rock station, you're not going to hear that music on daytime, mainstream, So for me...
Throughout the whole of the music industry.
So for me, Choice really changed black English culture, or UK black British culture. Well, British culture, never mind black British, because, one of the things that we found out when we were doing our research was that you have these diaries sent to and people fill them out. And of course, when they sent it back, there were more white people listening to Choice FM than there were black people. Yeah. And the mainstream radio stations knew that. And they began to realize that black music is not just listened to by black people. There's a lot more white, and because of the demographics, there are far more white people in London than there were ever going to be, So